I'm at the Battle Creek Motorcycle Club for my first Sprint Enduro race of the 2021 season. This clip actually isn't of the Sprint Enduro, but it is a ride that I went on a few weeks earlier where I was testing out a new camera mount. I don't know about you, but I don't think it turned out very good, but more about that later. This is the same venue as the last race of 2020. And this particular race, which is busier than the other races that I've attended, is also an ISDE, International 6 Days in Michigan qualifier event. So there's some racers here that are competing in this event for points so that they can go to the International 6 Days in Michigan event. I do like these Sprint Enduros because they don't have a mass start or a wave start at the beginning, and it's a time trial launch. But I race C class, which means that I have to wait after the pros and A's and B's in order to start the race. And since it's a time trial launch format, that means I have to wait for almost all the other riders to start before I get to race. So the lineup at the beginning is pretty significant on this Saturday morning, but I still get to enjoy taking off on my own and only catching a few other riders and only having a few other riders catch me. And it's one thing I like about the Sprint Enduro series. On this particular morning, we have 271 registered riders, and so that's going to put me back with a start about an hour from official race start time. So all these other riders here are going to be taken off before I get to do any racing. However, it's a beautiful morning, about 55 degrees, and it's a great day to sit in the sunshine and watch motorcycles. I'll fast forward here until I pull up to my turn. The rider in front of me is getting ready to pull forward too. The intervals today were 15 seconds, so the riders moved through it pretty quickly. And so, as you can see, with 3 or 4 riders in front of us, we've only got a couple minutes until we're going to take off. And I'm about 2/3 of the way back through the C class, so I figure I'm probably in about the right place, so I won't pass too many people, and not too many people will have to pass me. One disadvantage to this type of a start format is that unless you're going to push your motorcycle, you have to start your motorcycle over and over again. So we're alternating between shutting off the bikes and pushing them forward, or starting the bikes and pulling forward. Obviously, as we get near the start, we need to pull them forward. The rider in front of me manages to stall out, and apparently his electric start doesn't work. So he realizes we're about to waste a 15-second window in front of a bunch of riders who've waited a really long time to race, so he waves me around. So I'm going to pull forward and take the slot quickly so that we can get started with racing and not holding everybody out behind us. That won't be the last rider that decides to get their right leg workout in the middle of race time before this lap is over. Now the actual time doesn't start until my transponder crosses the antenna, so I'm trying to stay calm and keep my heart rate down, and I think I've got all of my stalling and starting problems with this motorcycle fixed. So if I do make a mistake, it's pretty quick. I'm really surprised when I come up on this rider right away. It doesn't seem like this rider was a full 15 seconds through this test. So it seems they were going slow, or they bobbled somewhere near the beginning, so I catch them right away. Fortunately, I'm able to cut inside here and get around them, and I don't see him again, so I must be faster than that rider. Pretty quickly, I come up on another rider with blue plastics on their bike that is frantically kicking away with their right leg, trying to get their motorcycle to start. So I'm not exactly sure what happened here. I haven't seen this many riders on the side of a pretty flat-looking trail kicking away, but I don't see that rider again during this test either. I am feeling pretty good here. The motorcycle's nice and dialed. Everything's going well. So the only thing I'm having a problem with is, and this happens very often when I start a race, I'm getting some arm pump. So my arms are already getting tired this quickly into this first test. This is even before I've gotten to the motocross portion, and the motocross portion is coming up because this first test is the cross test. If you're not familiar with this race format, you do the cross test, then the enduro test, and then you repeat in that order until you're through with the day. So you don't never do the same test twice. So I'm sort of looking forward to getting out on the motocross track and going a little faster, but I don't have any real motocross experience, so it's also a little bit of apprehension because the handlebars are feeling harder and harder to hang on to, and I haven't even made it out to the track yet. Before I move forward to the motocross track portion of this test, I wanted to talk about why the camera has a little piece of my front fender at the bottom and no handlebars. And that's because the AMA has come up with a new rule that we can't attach GoPro cameras to our helmets unless the GoPro mount is already a permanent part of the helmet when you buy it. No modifications to the helmet, including the GoPro mount, are allowed. This race in particular has some AMA person at it because it's an ISD qualifier, so we definitely don't want to push our luck trying to mount a camera on our helmet. So I'm trying to follow the rules here, and in this particular day I've got the adhesive mount for my camera stuck to the headlight that I added to my YZ250FX. So this is a headlight mount that's catching just a little of the fender in the screen. I don't think it's too bad. I think I'm probably lucky that the GoPro 9 has some pretty good image stabilization, so moving around on the motorcycle is not too bad. Occasionally when I go through the curves it gets a little bit of this swing forward, swing back effect. Some of it probably makes it look like my handling of the bike is a little better than it really is. But the video going down the trail is not too bad. This was a strange weekend for me for having extra people and extra things on the course. And coming up here in a few curves, there's going to be a rider. I'm not really sure how they ended up in the position that they're in, but there's someone with them who's kind of waving me down to let me know that there's somebody there, and they're off the trail. I'm assuming they're just trying to get out of the woods because of a broken motorcycle or something. But throughout the weekend there were more people that were on the side of the trail or crossing under the barriers, so it seemed like I had to pay extra attention to make sure that I knew what was going on near the trail. And the trail is actually in really excellent condition, so it's pretty exciting actually to see how great it was when we started doing the racing. And even throughout the weekend it didn't get too ripped up. It was really fun to ride on this property. So there's the broken rider. I'm not sure what's happening with that person. Maybe they were a worker that was doing something and just wanted us to know they were there. So we'll be going out onto the motocross track here after the bridge. This bridge always kind of scares me. You can't see it anymore because my camera's not mounted on my helmet, but I usually look back before this bridge because I really don't want somebody right behind me pushing me over the bridge. And the rules with the Sprint Enduro is that somebody catches you, you should find a quick way to let them around. So I don't want to be holding them up if I'm going slower over the bridge. But I just can't try to fly over that bridge or jump it or anything. I'd rather kind of be in control and do my own thing when that happens and get out here to the faster open sections. And the suspension's working really good on my machine, so I'm kind of excited actually to do this test here that goes through portions of the motocross track. One thing that was happening is throughout the day the wind picked up, so you can really see the barriers getting whipped around. Probably isn't too much to say here about my progress. I'm trying to stay up on the pegs and keep a good rider position while I'm riding through this loam, and then move forward far on the bike when I go into sharper curves to help with the bike handling. And here's another rider on the side of the trail, maybe the same person, looks like, trying to get their way through. And other than that, the trail's in great shape. A few of these barriers seem to get a little blown out, and I don't know if the wind picked them up or if other people went through. Like I said, I was pretty far back on the 271 rider, so an awful lot of people have gone through here. It only takes one mistake to rip down the ribbons. And throughout the day there were a few places where the ribbons were missing that messed me up a little bit. But if you pay close attention to the arrows and the other things that are on the course, it's usually not too big of a deal, even if the tape is gone or it's gotten blown away for some reason. They also seem to work hard to try to get it put back up. I never saw places where the tape was down where I went through for my next test on that same section and it was still down. So they were trying to keep it up and keep it in the right place. Last year at the event that was on this property, I was pretty hurt. So I feel like I'm going a lot faster this year, particularly on the motocross track. And I also feel safer because I'm in the correct riding position more, because I'm not sitting down, because I'm not in pain. So I feel like a lot of these curves I'm able to cut through better. You can't really compare the times, particularly from event to event, because not only do the track conditions change, but also they reroute things, so they'll cover a different number of miles. So this test was taking me somewhere right a little over 12 minutes usually, and I was considering moving from 40 plus C, which I was in last year, to 50 plus C. Here's another rider on the track, and I considered moving to B. I got 5th overall last year, and I was kind of having a little case of the conscience. Somebody passes me there that's obviously a lot faster than me, and I thought that maybe I should move up to B just because I wanted to make sure that you know, I wasn't just a ringer for higher positions. But it turned out really well to stay in C and move to 50 plus C, because there's a good number of riders in that class, and on this particular day I ended up with 3rd, and well, there were only 2 minutes in the first 5 positions. So out of what for us was about 90 minutes of riding total, there was only 2 minutes difference. So I think I'm in the right class. So there's a pretty good group there that's all competing for the top finishes in that particular C group class, so I'm in the right place. And really there isn't too much to say here other than we're going to ride out to the end of this lap, and I'm able to make it through without any crashes or any other drama, and this sort of sets the stage for the rest of the weekend. I'm actually able to keep my lap times on this section down to within a handful of seconds for every lap. You can look these up on live laps if you really want to see, but it's nice for me to be able to look at that and see how consistent that I am. One lap was a little bit longer on the enduro test, but that is also because I managed to tip the bike over, and then it took me a minute to stand it back up, and I kind of had to take a little excursion off the trail and come back. One of the rules probably for most of these type of racing is that if you leave the markered area of the trail, you have to come back on in the same place you left. So because I bobbled and I left in a place that would have given me an advantage, I just turned around and came back to make sure I was following the rules. And so overall, the track is in good condition, and it stays that way throughout the weekend, although the conditions do change. There isn't too much dust. It rained a few days before. There's more dust the second day. Here's a case where the barriers were causing me a little confusion. I wanted to make sure I got back on the right track here and didn't end up in no man's land in the middle. But overall, the conditions were great. The conditions in the enduro test in the woods got a little more bumpy, but I actually like that kind of trail. It's just more difficult for me to go fast, which, you know, that's okay. If I can't necessarily go fast, we're all riding on the same trail, so it still makes it fun. I think the video from the headlight's not too bad. The problem I ended up with this video is that the camera sticks up on the mount that I stuck to the headlight, and the headlight surface isn't perfectly flat, so I was a little nervous that the adhesive mount would eventually break off. As it turns out, it was probably adhered quite well. I had a really hard time removing it later. But an additional problem was that the camera stuck up and covered part of the numbers that were on my number plate. For this kind of a race, that isn't too big of a deal while you're moving, but they do have to read it before you start and as you finish as a backup to the transponder timing system. And so it makes it a lot harder for the workers if it's not easily visible on your number plate. So I don't want the workers to have to work harder and crane their necks and get up and move around in order to see the value. So after this test, I took the camera off, or I did one more test, but after my first test on both, I took the camera off, rode the rest of the day without a camera on, and then the next day I mounted it on the fender itself. And that video came out, I think, okay too. There's a little bit more fender visible because it's a little bit lower, but I still haven't come up with a final position to put the camera. So we'll see how this turns out. I'm not too offended by this, but it's definitely not very dynamic because you can't really see very much of what I'm doing. I'm not that dynamic of a rider compared to somebody like a pro, so maybe it's not that big of a loss not to see what I'm doing. But it would be nice to be able to put the camera back on my chin on the helmet, because that video came out really good, and I do think it's a little more dynamic when you can see where I'm looking versus where the motorcycle's going. But at least the fancy modern technology for these cameras is helping make it so that the video is still of acceptable quality. So in a similar vein, the transponder doesn't stop counting your time until you get close to the antenna. So this little bobble I have here doesn't help because I haven't gotten to the timer, and then I have to hesitate for a second because the worker has to read my number carefully because they can't see it because my camera's in the way. So that's my first indicator, and I get another one in a little bit that I need to fix that. If you made it this far, thanks for watching. I hope you enjoyed the video.